Bleed on My Teeth is the third full-length album from Adorior, a London, England-based blackened death metal band, a death thrashing black metal band, a heavy metal band in general, and one who have always stayed pretty true to their original themes of what is essentially black thrash metal as you would describe it today, but it does have elements of classic death metal in the 80s sense. This has always been a violent and vitriolic band who are no stranger to pushing the limits of both their visual presentation and their riff count. If you go back to their earliest days, they had guitarists from bands that went on to play in like Razor of Occam and Lucifer, and we know those are fantastic groups. I've always seen the personality of this band has like a little bit of like Queen of Siam era Holy Moses, and I don't mean just because it's female fronted. I mean that there is like a late 80s kind of death metal, an extremity to it with simple songwriting. When I say simple, I mean very classic 80s death metal feeling, that extreme thrash metal side to it, and the way that bands like Impiety on their first record or even Bestial Warlust pushed that into a more rabid and riff-oriented structure. So if you're a fan of Sarcophago and all the bands that they've influenced over the years, it's likely that you're going to love what this band does because they do kind of get there on that first record, their first demo. But as they moved on, they added drummer DBH of Grave Miasma in 2005 for their second record. And it's important to note that this became a very different band. All of a sudden, the drumming was entirely different. He's a much more technical and really player with a lot more endurance for a different type of drumming. And so that really added dimension to their sound on the second record. So if you're a fan of like Ara Noir, but you still enjoy like Angel Corpse, there was a lot going into that second record that was built upon the foundation of the first one, but it kind of rocketed into the future a little bit and showed that what they could do with more brazen pacing and aggression. It definitely felt more like a black and death metal band than a black thrash metal band as they had sounded on the first record. Now those are generational distinctions. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that this band has a very strong personality and it has always showed up very big on their records. But it has been about 14 years since their last split album, and it's been even longer since their last album. So are they even capable of reigniting that fire? Like, how do they really show up on this record so many years later? Well, we'll cut to a clip and we'll get a sense of that right now. So the short of it is that they've really just picked up where they left off and done it bigger. They've put together a lot of these riff-packed pieces. They've obviously been considered for a very long time and put together with a lot of care, and the energy is still up. These people are fantastic performers, and it really shows on this record in the way that they are so precisely able to both invoke the sort of over the top crazed thrashing black metal of their original album and the extreme amplification of that into the next generation on the second record. And you see that the people who are in this band now are in some of my favorite groups otherwise from this sort of scene and mindset. And so we get a lot of just it's just riff after riff on this record, and that's all I could focus on for most of this album because these songs are structured on as like speed and thrash metal songs. They're pretty straightforward, but they pack a lot of rhythm into those simple structures, and so I couldn't call it a pure death metal record in any sense, and it's not necessarily a typical black metal record as we find today or even 20 years ago. And so there is that black death thrash feeling happening on it, and it really makes for a great record. I kind of cut my review a little bit short because I didn't want to overstate the complexity of it or really anything more than the riffs. That really is what's going to bring you here. It's what's going to make you stick with this record is the fact that these guitarists go nuts on this record. The vocalist has a huge personality that is venomous and poignant on this record. They're just kind of destroying their way through it. But these songs are actually very good in the way that they're composed. And there's maybe a higher level of precision in the actual guitar work as they hit riff after riff, and they sort of finesse their way through the rhythms in an easier way. You can tell there have been a lot of rehearsals for all of these musicians, and they really know what they're doing in terms of these songs. So I'd be interested to see this band live and see these songs performed, because they're so sharp and spot on this record to the point where it's just kind of outrageous in the way that it presents itself. And I think that's part of their goal, is to really convey that strong energy that they put into these songs on record. And so they've done a great job with that. And for me, as a fan of like the more classic styles and a lot of the things that have influenced this type of band, I think they've met that expectation. They've met that high standard. There is kind of a real assault to this record that isn't over the top in the usual way. Definitely worth checking this band out for their personality alone. You're probably going to stick around for the riffs, and I think the overall addictive nature of the work they put into these records is something that I think a lot of listeners will really enjoy for how much of an attack it is. This is well above average. This is a very high recommendation for me. I think that some of the aspects of their sound and imagery is an acquired taste, but if you're into the really evil, aggressive, traditional side of things, but want something that pushes it up just an extra notch, I think this is a fantastic band and one worth checking out. Again, this is one of the best records of the month, and it releases on September 27th. Go ahead and check it out when it releases, and read my review if you'd like more of my thoughts.